Our next speaker is Leigh Belbeck. Leigh has been with the Binderee Beef Company for the last 15 years. She has been mainly involved in the industrial relations and human resources area. Her children are also in the industry with her. Leigh is the daughter of J.R. McDonald, for any of those who wonder why of Binderee Beef. So her children are third generation family in the business. J.R. tells me she's very passionate and determined. I'll have to agree with that. Leigh, you'll go. Now look at the audience. Could you get a better audience than that?
Okay. I want to thank the organisers for inviting us here today to speak. Obviously, the meeting that we held at Armidale wasn't quite as negative or disruptive as the press reported. Okay. 2 or 3 weeks ago, coming up with some of the issues that Julia Gillard's facing, she had to start addressing the Border Patrol and the illegal immigrants. And what she said, you cannot have any meaningful debate if we have to be politically correct. We've got to set that aside and we've got to say what we really think and how we feel. And I'm listening to Ms. Gillard and I'm taking her, I'm taking on board what she said and I'm acting upon that today. So, I've listened to the speakers today and there's been points made, and we've heard about workers' comp, we've heard about electricity, rising fuel and transport costs, we've heard about insurances, carbon taxes, etc., etc. And I say, that's not what we're here about today. They're issues that are affecting every person and every business in Australia. Today we're here to focus on what is affecting our beef industry specifically and what we can do to get those specific costs off so that we can turn our industry around and we can once again be profitable. Back in 2001, the MLA commissioned, at a cost of approximately $170,000, a report by Professor Heilbrun into the costs on our industry in Australia. I'll read directly the findings that Professor Heilbrun came up with. He said, this study quantifies for the first time the long-held feeling of the meat industries that the government take from the industry in Australia is excessive, and this retards our international competitiveness. Strategies must be implemented by the Australian meat and livestock industries to pull back the level of government-influenced costs and charges in Australia to internationally competitive levels. Failure to halt and reverse the inexorable increase in these costs and charges must inevitably contribute to the long-term decline of Australia's industries. 9 years ago, we're in the situation that we're facing now because rather than take note of the report they commissioned, the MLA buried it in a drawer so it wasn't heard of, and they have continued to increase your costs. So let's have a look at some of the cost increases that we've had that you probably aren't aware of, that you're paying for out of your pocket. One of the first ones is the AMPC. That's the Australian Meat Processor Council, Corporation, whatever, who can keep track of what all these acronyms are. It is a processor body. It has, in the last few years, increased its levy by 12.5%. So for every beast you have killed, the processor takes just over 0.5 cent a kilo as an additional levy from the producer. So that's averaging somewhere between $1.50 and $2 per head levy you're paying for the processor to put into our representative body. In 2007, allegations about misappropriation of somewhere between $4 and $6 million of levies from the AMPC became not public, because that's been kept quiet, but it was we became aware of it. Now, on notification of the misappropriation of funds, the first thing Binderee Beef did was ring Tony Burke's office. I personally spoke with his then advisor and said to him, the AMPC has a budget annually of approximately $18 million. That's quite insignificant in comparison to the MLA's $160 million, but it's still $18 million of our money. And I said to him, if they have lost somewhere between $4 and $6 million of levy payer money, we need to have a halt immediately of any more funds going into that body until there is a full investigation. Nothing was done. 12 months later, a letter was sent around to all the processors. It was from the former Chief Financial Officer, a gentleman by the name of Greg O'Connor. He is the chap who apparently or allegedly stole in excess of $4 million. He sent the letter out to the processors telling them of a number of serious counterclaims that he alleges has been committed by the AMPC. Now, some of them are more legality-wise and apparently are quite important, of course. They're illegal activities. But the one point that truly stuck home with me was the alleged misuse of PIP funding. Now, the PIP funding works a little bit like frequent flyer points. The processor pays so much money into the AMPC in your levies, and we get a little bit of a credit back. And for 3 years, you have that credit, and if you haven't used it, it disappears, but the next year's funding goes and earns us a little bit more credit. As I said, like a frequent flyer point situation. Now, you get the credit for the PIP funding for R&D. R&D is one of the major talking points in our industry. It's vital, as we're all told. My mother tells me it stands for rip-offs and deceptions. My mother doesn't make many mistakes, because I can tell you something. Listen to what Greg O'Connor claims. He said it was obvious that certain plants or members were given preferential treatment. Also, certain members were discriminated against whenever they applied for a project. There was little or no chance of it being approved. From personal experience, we have had very little success until just recently in getting any PIP funding. And the funding that we've just had approved was 50% towards the costs of a number of surveys we did on behalf of consumer organisations and information to try and get a good beef grading and truth in labelling proposal put towards government. So that's what Binderee applied for. We got 50%. What I find interesting is when the allegations from Greg O'Connor came out, we once again got in touch with the Minister's office, and we got in touch with the chairman of the AMPC, Des Nichol. Now, we said there's all these counterclaims, there's speculation, there's gossip, there's innuendo. Let's set it all aside, make it transparent and public where all the money has gone, who's received it, how it's been spent. The reply was, that is commercial in confidence, we can't tell you. A little bit like some of these news reports that we see on TV, Binderee Beef exclusively have got hold of secret documentation. We have found a list of claims and payments for a period from 2002 to 2007. There were claims put in from a number of beef processing plants to the tune of approximately $6 million. There were invoices paid to those very same plants in excess of $8.2 million. Now, there could be some accounting discrepancies. I'm not sure. Maybe invoices weren't put in, but payments have been made. There's enough there to tell me this needs to be further investigated. What truly concerns me is this paper showing Binderee Beef has received, during that 2002 to 2007 period, $466,000 from the AMPC in PIP funding. Our records don't show that. As of this week, we have sent another letter to the AMPC asking for full disclosure on Binderee Beef's invoices and all payments made to us. When the response comes through, I'll make it available on our website so that everybody here can see it. What gets me cranky is, to date, this has been kept so quiet. The Minister's office refuses to do one thing about it. It is as if the entire meat industry peak councils have closed ranks and they're keeping it quiet. I have alarm bells in so much as this is a body that has an $18 million a year budget. The level of possible or potential or alleged corruption is appalling, and I then have to suggest or wonder what is happening in larger organisations with the massive budgets they have, where there again is absolutely no transparency. Okay, we come back now to another body. As has been raised today, back in 1998, the then structure of the meat industry was scrapped and this current structure was implemented and put in place. The first lesson to take from that is people, no matter how hard everybody tells us it is to get the change and, little steps, do this, do that, it's been done in the past and it can be done again. And keep in mind, very clearly, I think Justin made it the point, and it's something you shouldn't forget. New South Wales NRL are sacking their selectors, their coach and their team because they've failed in the last 5 years. We've put up with this now for 12 years. It's way past time that we had the same clean out the NRL's had. As a matter of fact, using NRL analogies, one of the biggest stories I think that's been in the media the last few months has been the Melbourne Storm cheating. They didn't steal money from anybody, they cheated. Look at the uproar, the outcry and the punishments that have been meted out on that. Look at the potential for corruption in our industry and we close ranks. It is time that something was done. So come back now to when our structure that we have now was implemented. There was $40 million roughly, as Brad said, of your levies that had to be placed somewhere, and that's what RMAC got. And every year, somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million of that is paid to the Cattle Council, to the Sheep Meat Council, to AMIC, to the lot feeders, to the live exporters and to the goat industry. In that 10-year period, the Cattle Council has had over $5.5 million. Now that money was put in reserves in the use of a crisis or an emergency in the meat industry. What the hell do you call this? But they're keeping it for themselves. The first thing that has to happen is a halt put on any further distribution of those funds and have it